It's book 9, the book of eternal night. And this canto is called Towards the Black Void. So that's just exactly what we've been reading about. Is how Satyavan starts to move, they follow this path, and then there are this gateway of black, conscious rocks. And when he comes to that point, where did we stop? Line 330? Yes. Line 330. Yes. So I'll read from there to the end. Then to that chill, sear, heavy line arrived, where his feet touched the shadowy march's brink. Turning, arrested, luminous Satyavan looked back with his wonderful eyes at Savitri. But death pealed forth his vast, abysmal cry. O mortal, turn back to thy transient kind. Aspire not to accompany death to his home, as if thy breath could live where time must die. Think not thy mind-born passion strength from heaven to uplift thy spirit from its earthly base and breaking out from the material cage to upbuoy thy feet of dream in groundless naught and bear thee through the pathless infinite. Only in human limits man lives safe. Trust not in the unreal lords of time, immortal deeming this image of thyself, which they have built on a dream's floating ground. Let not the dreadful goddess move thy soul to enlarge thy vehement trespass into worlds where it shall perish like a helpless thought. Know the cold turnstones of thy hopes in life. Armed vainly with the ideal's borrowed might, dare not to outstep man's bound and measured force. Ignorant and stumbling, in brief boundaries pent, he crowns himself the world's mock suzerain, tormenting nature with the works of mind. O sleeper, dreaming of divinity, wake trembling mid the indifferent silences in which thy few weak chords of being die. Impermanent creatures, sorrowful foam of time, your transient loves bind not the eternal gods. The dread voice ebbed in the consenting hush, which seemed to close upon it, wide, intense, a wordless sanction from the jaws of night. The woman answered not. Her high, nude soul, stripped of the girdle of mortality, against fixed destiny and the grooves of law, stood up in its sheer will, a primal force. Still, like a statue on its pedestal, lone in the silence and to vastness bared, against midnight's dumb abysses piled in front, a columned shaft of fire and light she rose.
Then to that chill, sheer, heavy line arrived, where his feet touched the shadowy march brink, turning, arrested, luminous Satyavan looked back with his wonderful eyes at Savitri.
So Satyavan has been walking in front, moving in front. The luminous Satyavan, the soul Satyavan. There's a beautiful painting of it here. And he's been leading the way. And now he's come just to the borderline, the shadowy march's brink. A march is also a borderline, but whereas a borderline is just a line, you step over it. Marches are the territories on either side of the borderline. And a brink is just the edge of something. We talk about the brink of the sea, which of course moves. So when he reaches that borderline, Satyavan stops. And he turns and looks back at Savitri. It says, turning arrested. It doesn't mean that the god of death is something like a policeman who comes and puts his hand and takes him off. It just means that it's as if he's been feeling the impulse of the path, but now he comes to a certain point and he stops and he turns around and looks back at Savitri with his wonderful eyes. It's a beautiful line, no? Looked back with his wonderful eyes at Savitri. Nihon.
But death peers forth his vast abysmal cry. O mortal, come back to thy transient kind. Aspire not to accompany death to his home. As if thy breath could live where time must die.
Yes. So death is still regarding Savitri as a human being. And he speaks to her as a human being. He says, you are immortal. You have to die. So you go back now. It's not your time to die yet. You go back to the other people like you. your kind, the people who are like you, who are all like you, transient. Transient, passing. They will not live long. No? Don't aspire, don't harbor that ambition to accompany death to his home. He says, I'm going to my home, to my own realm, and I'm taking Satyavan with me. And don't think that you can come with us. You cannot accompany us. Because that would mean that your breath, our physical prana that keeps us alive in our physical bodies, as if your breath could live where time must die. In the home of death, there is no time. It's beyond time.
In the previous sentence, what is the meaning of seer? The seer.
Oh, seer, yes. Seer, this is some typical word for autumn. The leaves get all dried up and withered. So something that is sere, it is barren, it's all like a desert. There's nothing fresh and living there. So that borderline is chill, heavy, sere, barren. It's all rock there, there's nothing growing.
And in this sentence, they peeled forth.
Pealing, that's a word that we use about bells. Bells ring out very loud and clear. So he's a god, he's huge, he's vast. And when he is angry, his voice is also very loud. He pealed forth his vast, abysmal cry. He has a voice that is full of darkness. Martin.
Think not thy mind-born passion strength from heaven, to uplift thy spirit from its earthly base, and breaking out from the material cage, to upbuoy thy feet of dream in groundless noise, and bear thee through the pathless infinite.
So do not think that your passion, your intense love for Satyavan will give you heavenly strength, unearthly strength. No. It's a passion which is a product of the mind. It won't give you that heavenly strength that would be able to lift your spirit up from this body, from this earthly base, this earth foundation, physical foundation, and allow your spirit to break out, escape from the material cage, as if our bodies are a kind of prison, a cage that we are held, the spirit is held inside that. Don't think that your love will be strong enough for that. It won't be able to upbuoy your feet of dream in groundless nothingness. He's going to take her to, or he's going to be going to a place where there is no ground to tread on. So where is she going to put her feet? He's telling her, you won't have the strength to go on walking there. There won't be anything to upbuoy your feet. A buoy is a signal that floats on the surface of the sea. And so it's the idea of something being very light and being able to lift you up or hold you up where there's nothing firm to stand on. So these your feet of dream, you may dream that you have those kind of feet, but you won't be able to do it. You won't be able Nothing will carry you, bear thee through the pathless infinite. He's not only going to go beyond time, he's going to go beyond space. There will be no base, he says, for Savitri to put her feet. There'll be nothing for her to breathe. She won't be able to survive there. Smita, you'd read.
Only in human limits man leaves the sea. Trust not in the unreal loss of time. Immortal demon, this image of thyself, which they have built on a dream's floating ground.
Thank you. So this is something that wise men have told us many, many times, that for human beings we have to live within our limits. Only in human limits man lives safe. If we go beyond those natural limits set for human beings, we bring ourselves into danger of different kinds. And he tells her, your body is just an image which has been made by the lords of time, and they deal with unreality. Everything that is in time and space is unreal. And there are, of course, powers that have to do with this physical world, but they too are unreal. And they have created this image of yourself. And don't think that it is immortal. To deem that something, it means to suppose or to believe. Don't believe that you are immortal, or that this image of yourself is immortal. These unreal gods of time have built this image in a dream, on a dream's floating ground. It has no stability and no reality. Shamala.
If not the dreadful goddess move thy soul to unlock thy vehement trespass into worlds, where it shall perish like a helpless.
You can read the next line also.
No, the cold tombstones of thy hopes in life.
Yes. So he realizes that Savitri, he knows that Savitri has worshipped Durga before setting out on this day. Perhaps he feels some presence of the mother with her. But he says, don't let that dreadful goddess move you, impel you to go any further, to enlarge thy vehement trespass. When you are walking somewhere where you should not be, on some territory or place where you should not be, you are trespassing. You're going where you should not go. And that's what he's telling Savitri. That's what you've done. You have come into these worlds where you are going to die. He says, don't let the dreadful goddess move thy soul to enlarge, to go any further in this trespassing into worlds where the soul, will perish like a helpless thought. He's threatening her with the death of the soul. The soul itself will be dissolved. And he says her trespass is vehement. If somebody is vehement, they are insisting very, usually quite loudly on something. Savitri hasn't been doing that, but he feels that there's something violent about her action, this trespass. She's insisting on going somewhere where she should not go.
The goddess Does he mean the goddess whom she prayed at the beginning?
I suppose that is what he's referring to, but he continues to refer to the goddess, and later on he's meaning the mother, the Supreme Mother. So I suppose Durga, even if she's only carved on a stone, she's an image of the Supreme Mother.
But he says dreadful goddess.
Yes, so Durga has her dreadful aspect, especially to people like him. She is very fierce. And then he says, know the cold tombstones of thy hopes in life. It's as if there are boundary stones placed which limit what we can hope, we human beings. We can hope within certain limits. He says, recognize those limits. They are like gravestones, cold tombstones. They mark the boundary of your hopes in life. Now you've come to the end of that. Sarojini?
I just borrowed light. That not full of statements, bound and misery was. Not and stolen in brief boundaries, then crown himself the world's most
Suzerain.
tormenting nature with the words of mind.
Yes. So he says, don't dare, don't have that foolish courage to go beyond the amount of strength that is given to human beings. That force of human beings is bound. It means it has a boundary. It is measured. It's limited. And then he mocks human beings. He says, he, man, is ignorant and stumbling, always making mistakes and tripping himself up. And he's pent, he's confined, tightly confined in these brief boundaries in which human hope and human strength can move. But he thinks he's the king of the whole world. He crowns himself the world's mock suzerain. A suzerain, it's like a sovereign, the lord to whom everybody must pay homage. He says mock suzerain, so he's not the real king of the world, but he puts on that paper crown as if he were the real one. And what does man do? What does the human race do? It's tormenting nature with the works of mind. That's what we do. If we look at poor Earth, how the poor Earth is suffering because of the works of human mind. We don't need to be like that. We can also do good things and take care of nature. But there's some truth in what he says, that human beings are tormenting nature with the works of mind. Uday.
Speakers dream of evident faith moving mind in the distant silence in which they feel vague clothes of being done. Incoming creatures, soulful form of time, your transient love ignore the eternal God.
Yes. He says you're asleep, you're dreaming You're dreaming of divinity, but now it's time to wake up. And you wake up and be afraid. Here you are in the midst, surrounded by these indifferent silences, these vast silent spaces which do not care about you at all. And here your few weak chords of being die. He's taking this image of music as if life is a melody, a very faint, feeble melody, and we don't have much of it. And here in these spaces, these silences, these indifferent silences, that music just dies away. He says, you human beings, you are impermanent creatures. You don't last forever. You last only a short time. And beautiful image, he says, sorrowful foam of time. On the top of a river that is flowing very fast, there will be bubbles. He says, you're like that. You're like those bubbles on the stream of time. And you are full of sorrow and suffering, you human beings. And you may think that you love, but your loves are transient. They are like you. You don't live long. Your loves don't live long. So your love cannot bind, cannot control the eternal gods. We don't have to take any notice of your transient loves. Chandresh.
The dread once ebbed in consenting push, which seemed to close upon it, wide, intense, a wordless sanction from the jaws of night.
So this dread voice, terrifying voice, ebbed. This is what the sea does. The tide comes high and then it goes away again. So he has said what he had to say. The sound of his voice dies away like the sea moving away from the shore. Ebbed. And it fades away in that silence, those indifferent silences. Here it seems as if they are agreeing with him. They are consenting, the silence, the consenting hush. And that seems to close in upon the sound, the echo of that voice. The hush is wide, intense. It's like a wordless sanction from the jaws of night. We give sanction, we say yes, we agree. So the silence doesn't say anything, it's wordless, but silence is also consent. This is coming from the night. And he doesn't say from the lips or from the mouth of night. He says from the jaws of night, as if that night is a great devouring beast which is going to swallow Savitri up. Varadarajan.
The woman answered not. Her high nude soul, stripped of the girdle of mortality, in its destiny and the grooves of law, stood up in its sheer will, a framer's post.
So here Aurobindo puts woman with a capital letter. So Death has been speaking about man. She is representing woman. It's a special kind of force. She doesn't answer. Her soul is as if stripped naked. It's been stripped of its girdle of mortality, the physical part of her, the part that has to die. She's free of that. And her soul stands up against everything that she's opposing. Fixed destiny. That's what she wants to change. Satyavan must die. She won't accept this fixed destiny. She won't accept these grooves of law. Grooves like the rails where a tram runs or a train. The tram or the train has to stick to the grooves. It can't go anywhere else. So it's as if there are certain laws in the universe that we can't help running on them. But Savitri is asserting her freedom from these fixed grooves of law. She's standing up with all her will, stood up in its sheer will, a primal force. This will is as strong as the primal force of death. A force, an original force that's been there from the beginning. It's just a hint, a small suggestion which Aurobindo gives here and there in the poem. That Savitri and death are equal powers. But he has not noticed that yet. Joel.
Still, like a statue on its pedestal, alone in the silence and to vastness there, against midnight's dumb abysses, piled in front, a columned shaft of fire and light, she rose.
Yes. Alone. She's like a statue on its pedestal. A statue is strong and fixed and immobile. It doesn't move. And the pedestal, well, we have Sri Aurobindo's statue outside. It's on a pedestal, on a base of rock. So she's like that, immobile, all alone in the silence. She's exposed to all that vastness. She's rising up like a fire. Like when we light the bonfire in the amphitheatre, it goes up and up, all the flames, in a kind of column. So she is like that, a columned shaft of fire and light she rolls against all this blackness, against midnight's dumb abysses piled in front. They're approaching these black rocks, which also seem to be representing all the depth of darkness that is there in the world, or beyond the world. Midnight, it means the blackest, darkest time and the blackest, darkest state of consciousness. An abyss usually is a very deep place. There's abysses in the sea, very, very deep, so deep, some of them, that nobody's ever gone to the bottom of them. But he says piled. There's one abyss on top of another and another and another. This is creating a huge obstacle in front of them. So this is the the movement from the death of Satyavan towards the black void. We're in the book of eternal night, and the next canto is called The Journey in Eternal Night and the Voice of the Darkness. Praveen, you would read, please?
Canto 2, The Journey in Eternal Night and the Voice of the Darkness. A while on the chill, dreadful edge of night, all stood as if the world were doomed to die, and waited on the eternal silence's brink. Heaven leaned towards them like a cloudy brow of menace through the dim and voiceless hush.
Yes. So they haven't yet entered the night. They're on the edge, on the brink. And it's cold. Again, he says, chill. This chill and dreadful night. There's something very frightening about it. And everything stood still. All the three of them stood still. But everything that is there is standing as if the whole world were doomed to die, as if everything is going to disintegrate and collapse now. And it's just waiting to collapse. It's waiting on the brink. Again, we have this word of the edge. You can be on the brink of a precipice. If you go one step further, you will fall. This is the brink of the eternal silence. And heaven, the sky above, is leaning towards them like a cloudy brow. This is the brow, the face of heaven is looking down full of darkness, dark clouds of menace. Something that is menacing, it's very threatening, as if it's promising something very bad will happen, a big storm or worse. That is leaning towards them through the dim and voiceless hush. Dim, there's very little light, and there's this silence, no voices. Hush. Gangalakshmi.
As we talked and moved on a despairing verge, for his last deeps plunge into nothingness, and the last dreams must end the pause. In their front were glooms like shadowy wings. Behind them are the lifeless evening was a dead man's gaze. Hungry beyond the night, desire the soul.
Thank you. So they paused. This is all three of them. This is Satyavan and Death and Savitri. And Aurobindo says they pause a moment. It's like thoughts might pause when everything that is in front seems hopeless. Our thoughts can't move forward. We are bewildered. We can't move forward, no? So it's as thoughts stand mute. Our thoughts can't speak anymore on this despairing verge. A verge is like a brink again, where the last depths plunge into nothingness, when we can't see anything ahead, and the last dreams must end. It's like that. They're pausing on the edge of nothingness. In front of them were glooms. Gloom is darkness, but it's also a state of mind. If you are gloomy, you are hopeless, you're full of despair. And those glooms are there. That's maybe also like clouds, like shadowy wings, as if there are birds of gloom, of darkness. And behind them, where they have come from, there's still a little light. It's pale, but it's a lifeless evening. It's like the kind of light one might still see in the eyes of a person who has died. There's no consciousness there. There's no life there anymore. And beyond, ahead of them, it's as if the night is just waiting to swallow up Savitri's soul. Joel, did you read? Yeah? Andres.
But still in slow niche of temple strength, motionless, her flame-bright spirit mute, erect, burn like a torch fire from a windowed room, pointing against the darkness, somber breast. The woman first affronted the abyss, daring to journey to the eternal night. Armored with light, she advanced her foot to crunch into dread and hueless vacancy. Immortal and a pale, her spirit faced the danger of the listless, eyeless waste.
Yes. So she is still burning, that columned shaft of fire and light. Everything is dark. Only Savitri's spirit is there, in its lone niche of temple strength. Her form, this must be her subtle form now, it's like a little shrine in which that flame is burning bright. It's silent, but it's erect, standing up like a column. It's burning like a torch fire from a windowed room, pointing against the darkness, somber breast. If we're outside in the stormy, dark night and we see a window where there's a candle burning, it's something like that. So they have been moving with Satyavan in front, death behind, Savitri following death. Now she goes first. The woman first affronted the abyss. She goes in front. No? She is daring to journey through the eternal night because she is armored with light. She's carrying this light and this strength with her. So she puts her foot forward to plunge into that dread and hueless vacancy. There's no color, it's completely empty, but she moves forward into it because she knows her own immortality. She's not appalled, she's not scared or frightened by this darkness. Her spirit faced the danger of the ruthless, eyeless waste, this desert of darkness. And Aurobindo says it's ruthless. It has no pity, no compassion. There's nothing welcoming about this darkness. It is cruel.
Shraddhavan, I have one question. When Aurobindo wrote, the woman first affronted the abyss, but when the death is before, is not affront before the death?
When they came to the borderline, all three of them stood still. So it's as if they're in a line there. And then we don't know who would move first, but she's the one who moves first. And then he says that they follow her.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's very interesting, yes.
Someday the dead go first in the representation of Savitri, not Auroville. Well, it turns out the image comes in me.
Oh, yes, it's like that. Yeah. No, in the poem it clearly says that first, or in what we read before last week, that Shraddhavan is going first.
Yeah.
And death is behind him like a shepherd.
Yeah,
and Savitri is behind death.
Yeah.
It's like that. But here the order changes. She starts to lead the way. And it continues like that. She continues to lead the way.
Thank you.
So we will stop there for today.
Unappalled.
Appalled. When something appalls you, you are so horrified, you don't know what to do. It can be physical terror, but very often it's a kind of emotional shock. You think, how could somebody behave like that? How could something like that happen? How could I see something like that? Horrified. But she is unappalled. Anybody else would be appalled by that darkness. But her spirit is not appalled, it's unappalled, because she feels her immortality and her strength.
Then to that chill, sear, heavy line arrived, where his feet touched the shadowy march's brink. Turning, arrested, luminous Shraddhavan looked back with his wonderful eyes at Savitri. But death pealed forth his vast abysmal cry. O mortal, turn back to thy transient kind. Aspire not to accompany death to his home, as if thy breath could live where time must die. Think not thy mind-born passion strength from heaven to uplift thy spirit from its earthly base, and breaking out from the material cage to upbuoy thy feet of dream in groundless naught, and bear thee through the pathless infinite. Only in human limits man lives safe. Trust not in the unreal lords of time, immortal deeming this image of thyself which they have built on a dream's floating ground. Let not the dreadful goddess move thy soul to enlarge thy vehement trespass into worlds where it shall perish like a helpless thought. Know the cold tombstones of thy hopes in life. Armed vainly with the ideal's borrowed might, dare not to outstep man's bound and measured force. Ignorant and stumbling, in brief boundaries pent, he crowns himself the world's mock suzerain, tormenting nature with the works of mind. O sleeper, dreaming of divinity, wake trembling mid the indifferent silences in which thy few weak chords of being die. Impermanent creatures, sorrowful foam of time, your transient loves bind not the eternal gods. The dread voice ebbed in the consenting hush which seemed to close upon it, wide, intense, a wordless sanction from the jaws of night. The woman answered not. Her high nude soul, stripped of the girdle of mortality, against fixed destiny and the grooves of law, stood up in its sheer will, a primal force. Still like a statue on its pedestal, lone in the silence and to vastness bared, against midnight's dumb abysses piled in front, a columned shaft of fire and light she rose. A while on the chill, dreadful edge of night, all stood, as if a world were doomed to die, and waited on the eternal silence brink. Heaven leaned towards them like a cloudy brow of menace through the dim and voiceless hush. As thoughts stand mute on a despairing verge, where the last depths plunge into nothingness, and the last dreams must end, they paused. In their front were glooms like shadowy wings. Behind them, pale, the lifeless evening was a dead man's gaze. Hungry beyond, the night desired her soul. But still in its lone niche of templed strength, motionless, her flame-bright spirit, mute, erect, burned like a torch fire from a windowed room, pointing against the darkness' sombre breast. The woman first affronted the abyss, daring to journey through the eternal night. Armoured with light, she advanced her foot to plunge into the dread and hueless vacancy. Immortal, unappalled, her spirit faced the danger of the ruthless, eyeless waste.